Let's continue. With this course should come a folder with the buildings contained in it. This is the folder that we're going to set up to this path. So let's go and find it. In my case, it's there. Depending on where you put it, this path could be somewhere else, but all you really want to do is just make sure that this path references the folder containing the buildings that go with this tutorial. Now let's just make sure in the same way that this actually works as we just did. So let's create a variable, buildings path, and reference the actual parameter containing the path. Who.node, this node, .parm path to buildings, .evaluate, because we wanted to evaluate what's in that path, and then we can print buildings path. There you go. So we get the path to the buildings. Depending, of course, on what your path is, it should reflect your current path. Now, what we want to do is we want to list all the buildings inside the folder, but we cannot just say for building and buildings path print building. What it's going to do is it's going to take every character in the string and print it out separately. So that's just not what we're looking for. What we have to do is import the OS module, and we've seen before how to import modules. So let's go ahead to the top of our code and import OS. This is an operating system module. OS stands for operating system. And what this gives us access to is the os.listdir function. And what that does is it lists all the files in a certain directory. So what we can now say instead of buildings path is say buildings folder is os.listdir. And into the listdir function we're going to pass buildings path. And that should contain, as we've seen, our path to the buildings. So now if we would say print buildings folder, we actually get a list of items contained inside. So what we can now do is parse over the buildings and actually start importing them into our scene. So let's go ahead and write a for loop that imports the houses for us. We can remove the print statement. Alright, let's be clear in what we're writing. So let's say for file in buildings folder, if file dot ends with .obj, and if file dot starts with 0, then do code. So what this block says is for every file in the buildings folder, if it ends with .obj, right, file names are a string, and that's why we are putting these in between quotation marks, and ends with is a function in which you can pass a part of a string or a number or whatever, and then it looks at if it actually ends with .obj. You could actually say ends with j, and it will find everything that ends with a j, but if there is a file type that is abj, then you'll also get those, and that's not what we want. So in this case we get all the files listed that end on .obj. Now, we also want only the houses, right? So the houses and the commercial buildings will end with .obj, but we also only want the houses. So we can use the same type of function, starts with, and then we pass in a 0. So now that we have a for loop containing the if statements that will filter out the houses for us, in the next video, we will start writing the code that's going to import them for us.